Thank you. I don't actually serve as a vice chair in this, though. Do we have a vice chair?
No, we don't have vice chairs for the technical advisory group.
Okay. Okay.
So staff steps in or council members attending the meeting.
Got it. No problem. Okay, thank you. So for everyone, if you haven't already talked about it, Andrew's going to join a little later. So I think there'll be a good handoff here at some point. Okay, so greetings, everyone. This is the IBC tag for the Washington State Building Code Council for Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. Stoyan, do we normally do introductions first or roll call?
Roll call.
Okay,
And,
roll call,
and after the roll call, we have the introduction.
Okay, thank you.
So Andrew will be late. He's not here yet. Charles Calvano. Sue sent me an email. She's on training all day. She will be able to, attend here and there, but not constantly. So her alternate, Mark Sniffen.
Present.
Thank you, Mark. Sean Karlstrom. Damon, I was told he left his employer, so I'm not sure what is the case with him, but we'll figure that out until the next meeting. Corey Thomas.
Yes, present.
Welcome, Corey. Todd is here. Robert Graper. No. Chris Seaman.
I'm here.
Chris is here. Al Spalding.
Present.
Okay. Michael Bart. No. Will Rodriguez. Okay. The bad part is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 TAC members present, and we need 7 for a quorum. We can discuss a few proposals. I have 2 announcements, introductions. I just need the feedback from the TAC members related to the EV charging. But without the quorum, the TAC cannot make any decisions.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's stall. Well, let's do with introductions first. So recognize anyone from the public that would like to introduce themselves.
Scott Lang with Honeywell Fire.
Amy Kruger, Pierce County Council.
Carrie Sutton with ACI.
Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire Department.
Well, we have a quorum of visitors, so okay. So Stoyan, we're waiting for 3 more TAG members. So if we can kind of monitor that, and then we'll skip over all the review and approve. And do you want to just jump into announcements, Stoyan?
Okay, so I can start with that. The first announcement that I'm going to make is John. John will take over the building code and the residential code. He's our new code specialist, and he's in the background today. He will be opening the documents and will be helping me, but probably the next meeting, 23rd, he will be the main person running the meetings, and I'll be helping. I'm going to get to agenda item 6. So John, if you can go to agenda item 6 and open document 01, I'll appreciate that.
No.
Nope, agenda item 6.
Yep, I'm finding it. So if you are opening it on your
at the last council meeting, the council was the council had to vote on an EV proposal that was driven by House Bill 1257. And there were, I'll be talking until John and Shannon find the document. And the council voted to table it until the next meeting. The issues were section, give me a second, 427.4. If you can go to 427.4, just scroll down a little bit. Okay, so 427.4 has item 1 and item 2, and it a few comments express the opinion that it's not really clear if item 2 refers to EV capable charging system or to EV chargers. And thought was at the meeting, if you want to provide more information for it, what I wanted was just to get some feedback from the council members. I'm sorry, from the TAC members, how you folks read this section 427.4. And the other one was some issues with the load management infrastructure. How it's written, it's not really clear what kind of a load management infrastructure the text is suggesting. So I have a few options for discussion for the load management infrastructure, but I want to go over the 427.4 first.
Stoyan, I'm probably not best qualified, although you and, if we can get Micah to speak up here, could probably best characterize that. Sorry, Micah.
This section was proposed for comments, and we didn't have any comment. We didn't have any testimony, and the issue was brought during the meeting from council members. And it's true when you read item 1 and item 2 without knowing the intent, it may get a little confusing. So again, the council will vote on this at the next council meeting in June. But I was wondering if the TAC members can share an opinion or suggest changes to the language.
And you're looking at how we currently kind of look at and apply these sections. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So when
is the
you
strikeout underlying language, is that based on what was done at the council meeting, or is that what's
no,
there now?
the strikeout and underline is what was filed with the CR 102. This is the proposal. We cannot make major changes to it, but if the council can make minor changes, then we will file it with the minor changes with the CR 103. But this is the language how it was filed.
This is Mark. Could I make a comment on this?
Yes, Mark, sure.
So when we're talking about loads and future planning for them, one of the things I see a problem is that the electrical board doesn't really review the plans unless they're hospital or some other kind of facility. So in general, at least in my jurisdiction where we don't have an electrical program, who would be able to opinion and enforce these additional loads to basically the load calculations and the single line diagrams and so forth that come along with planning an electrical system? How is a building official or plans examiner supposed to opinion on these when they're not trained to do that? I see that as a problem with this kind of trying to load management or try to service capability. That's just a comment I wanted to make.
I'm not sure how you folks are checking the electrical plans. Don't you review the electrical calculations and the capacity of the service panel?
No, the Department of Labor and Industries in my jurisdiction does sometimes, and it's only on certain services. You know, it's very very selective when they review anything. And so, as a former electrical inspector, I wasn't charged with doing the electrical plan review as far as load calculations and service capability. Even when we had the projects, we reviewed for code compliance, but we're not electrical engineers. So I think that this is something that we need to have some mechanism for them to either not serve, but self check on it, or maybe some kind of statement that says, put it in somebody's capacities, in, you know, maybe a statement from an electrical engineer or a statement from the electrical contractor or something to, because as far as I know, most jurisdictions are not going to be able to tell you if you add 10 40 amp circuits, 240 volt to a 3-phase system, how you balance that load in your main switchgear. And they may, I just don't see that being something that we can really opinion on.
Yeah,
Okay.
in practice,
Thank-
still in Tacoma, what we ask for is for them to point out where that infrastructure is going to be in the future. So space in the electrical room for the panel and where the conduit is that's going to accommodate the circuits. We have them pointed out on the plans, but as far as reviewing to the adequacy of that, that's not something that us building reviewers are really going to be competent in. Our utility would be able to do that, but it's not in their code to enforce. So we do our best to make sure the space is there, but we're trusting them to a large degree that the space that they show us is adequate.
If I could add to that, Chris, for DOH, when we're looking at healthcare facilities, that's the same approach that we would take. And if they were to build that out, we would require that they get a permit from LNI, and LNI would be the one to review that to ensure compliance with the electrical codes.
Okay.
This is Micah. Is per RCW 19, it's required to be enforced, whether that's through your jurisdiction or whether you contract with another jurisdiction, if that's LNI.
I can't hear you.
Was that Micah? I wasn't able to hear either.
Yeah, I think he was trying to share something, but it was hard to hear him.
Micah, are you there? I heard enforcement. Probably he was citing the RCW about a local enforcing agency, local jurisdictions enforcing the building codes. But this is all I got.
You guys might have a quorum now, if you want to look at that again.
Okay.
This is Sue. I'm here if you needed me for your quorum.
Yeah, but we can't use Sue because Mark is attending too, and he is the alternate. So Sue and Mark have one one vote.
Or one people, one person.
One
Oh, okay.
person, yeah.
This is Mike Barth. I joined in late.
Okay, so we have Mike Barr. Anybody else joining later? Will Rodriguez? Andrew, not here yet. Sean Karlstrom?
Here.
Oh, okay. We're getting close. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. We got the quorum.
Good. Well, welcome everyone. By the way, this is Todd, so I'm filling in for Andrew. He's going to join in a little bit here if you're joining late. Okay, so we can complete this discussion though, right? And then we'll jump back to, or do you want to go?
Okay,
I'll move back.
let's complete this discussion.
Okay.
The issue here, and I really appreciate the notes and the comments you're making. I wasn't aware of that, and I will share this with the council. And again, we have council members here, but the issue in item 1 and 2, as it was discussed at the council meeting, was because both items are referring to 427.2, and the intent for item 1 was, item 1 is the electric vehicle charging station. You have the charger charging capability, and item 2 was intended to address, for future installation of chargers. And I guess the confusion comes with the reference to section 427.2. At least this is what was discussed at the council meeting. And the other one was for the load management infrastructure. And again, I can open, just give me a second. John, if you can open the second document, EV options. The load management infrastructure, how it's proposed and how it appears in this language, doesn't clarify if it's a load management system for the entire electrical system. Is it a load management system that will control the chargers only? And this is important because it's important to know how many chargers are required to operate simultaneously at the same time. The electrical code doesn't have the scoping. The electrical code allows the load management systems, but the electrical code doesn't clarify how you will use the load management systems. So what I have here is I reached out to 3 different states and a few state agencies working on this electrical vehicle proposals for 2021. And I modified the language a little bit, but I don't agree with all these options. I just wanted to have those for discussion purposes. And again, if you folks can provide some feedback. The first one is the definition for automatic load management system. And the second definition is from the electrical code, the energy management system. So I took it as it is adopted in the National Electrical Code. Option one requires all required EV spaces at the full rated amperage of the electric vehicle supply equipment. What that means is if you have 10 EV chargers and 10 EV capable for future installation, you need to account, when you're calculating the electrical loads, you need to account 100% of these chargers and future chargers working at the same time, which means you cannot use the load management system to manage your charging. Option 2 and option 3, they are kind of similar, but not the same. So option 3 talks about, again, I will use the same example with 10 electric vehicle supply equipment, which is chargers or receptacle outlets. If you're required to have 10, but you have 15, the language in option 3 will allow you to have a load management system if the load management system allows the transformer to deliver at least 3.3 kilowatts simultaneously on each EV charging station. This is about 13, 14 amps for each charger. Not really enough. I don't know how they got this 3.3. I think it was from a state of New York or city of New York. I don't know how they got here, but this is what is enforced. Again, option 2 is similar, just different language. And option 4, we got this proposal submitted to the council. It will be discussed. It's not approved by the council yet, but we received it a few days ago. And I don't really understand the intent behind it, but I just have it here as it was proposed in the forum.
Yes, Stoyan, if I can speak as a council member, you know, we went to, for those of you that weren't there or listening to the meeting, it was discussed at depth, and I think the commentary or the input that would be most helpful is these discussions about load management at the system level or at the whole building level. I think that's what most of us were trying to wrap our head around that aren't deep experts in this area.
Yes, and I did some research and I couldn't find out what was the intent when the bill was introduced and when the bill was adopted. I checked everywhere. I checked out documents. I found some videos from you know, the TV archives, but I didn't see a word about the load management system. And again, if the load management, if the requirement is our required TV spaces at the full rated amperage, that means the load management system can control the electrical system as a whole, but not the charging capability. And the other options 3 and 4, they're applicable to systems that they can control the electric vehicle charging system, but it needs to be clarified in the language what is the requirement, how many of those need to work simultaneously.
Can I make another statement? This is Mark again.
Yes, Mark, please.
It really seems to me like we're straying from the ground that the building code should be on. To me, this should be a matter for the National Electrical Code and the AIEI and the committees there to start, because when we start talking about branch circuits and amperage and voltage, and all of these things come together under a whole bunch of rules that are correlated under the National Electrical Code. And when the building code starts getting into this fine a detail, I really believe the source should be coming from the National Electrical Code and the writers and the correlators from them. I think once we start putting in rules how to manage loads like these in buildings, there's a lot more to it. And economy-wise, I don't think we should be able to impose a design requirement on. It seems like we're requiring a design on these rather than leaving it to an engineer or to the National Code writers. You know, a lot of these, if you're going to do these, I would suggest, you know, they use the feeder tap rule and divide it that way, but that's not even in here. So I don't know why the building code is starting to write language that reads like the electrical code, in short.
The council didn't add the language. The language was part of the bill that was approved by the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that sentence for the load management system, it was already there. You're correct. It should be in the electrical code. And the electrical code, I have this, if you see on the second page, this section 625.42 rating, and the last sentence is related to the load management system. it addresses the load management system, but again, it doesn't specify how many chargers need to be in operation at the same time. And this is the issue that the council members were having. So the load management system for the electrical system entirely, or load management system for the electric vehicle chargers only. And again, I have this here not to have a vote from the TAC. I just needed some feedback, and I'll prepare based on the feedback and what I found. I'll prepare something for the council next week.
Brian, this is Micah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I don't know if everybody else can.
Awesome. I just wanted to address some things too on this, because I know, and just let Mark know, I'm not sure, I didn't introduce myself. So I represent, of course, I'm technical code development with Seattle, but I also represent code officials on the State Building Code Council. We voted against moving this forward. So I want to let the TAG know that. For many of the reasons stated, we also agreed this should be in the electrical code and not the building code. And the legislation and what they put in the legislative language and then more or less had to be put in this code language doesn't work. And so we voted against it. Unfortunately, there's not many ways to fix it right now. We may have to work with legislators to change it. In Seattle, and I know everybody doesn't like Seattle, but in Seattle, this is a land use requirement and the electrical items are in the electrical code. It's not in our building code. We vote to amend this out for Seattle, and we point to the electrical code. So we agree with you there. The code officials agree with you there. We voted against this. Our WABOs, Washington Association of Building Officials Technical Code Committee that I chair, also voted to speak against this and vote against it for the State Building Code Council. So at the State Building Code Council, L&I was also there. Their electrical representative, I think it was Rod Munch. I forget his name. Anyway, he had issues with this as well. I think it would be better if the legislators sent this piece of legislation to get fixed and included L&I in their electrical program, since there are many jurisdictions like Mount Vernon there that don't have their own electrical program, and makes this tough to enforce. And what I tried to say earlier was on that enforcement issue, unfortunately, per RCW 19, somebody's required to enforce it. And if you don't have a program, obviously you got to push L&I to enforce this a little more accurately. And so that's sadly the way it's got to go. And this is the whole reason we try to get legislators not to write code into legislation. So anyway, that was my 2 cents. We did vote against this. And part of what I mentioned to the State Building Code Council, we didn't see a way to fix this right now because of the legislation that is explicit in what has to be included in this verbiage. So unfortunately, it's going to end up moving forward and just be broken. So there's my 2 cents and plus some. Thanks.
Micah, this is Todd. When were the WABO votes? I'm not remembering that.
We discussed it at the not at the WABO membership, but at the WABO Technical Code Development Committee. And that was I want to say that was last fall when this was brought up.
Okay, I'm just forgetting that.
We've been working on this for quite a while.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
I'm just curious, has there been any attempt to contact the bill proponents and let them know that the language that was passed and is now law is we can't implement this because this and the intent is not clear? That's one of the things I would consider doing, is going back to the people that proposed this and saying, the intent's not clear. We're not even sure what part of the system you're talking about. And that's sometimes a good way to start the conversation in terms of the approach that Micah was talking about, is to bring to the attention to the people that created and passed this law that it's a mess in a nice way, right? And that we need your help. If you want us to implement this, we need your help doing it, because the intent's not even clear. and that there are some technical provisions of it that don't make sense in terms of how we do business in the state of Washington, as Micah stated. This needs to be, L&I needs to be involved with this, because this could be probably worked in a way that maybe didn't have all the specific information in it, but called out some of the requirements for electrical charging. I see the building code making that statement, but then refers to the electrical code. And it would be interesting if the State Building Code Council went to the proponents of this bill and said, this doesn't work for the people. We have lots of experts. You heard the testimony, you passed it anyways. Now we're having a hard time implementing it. Anyway, just a suggestion.
I did my best to find out the intent, and it's reaching out to the sponsors. It's too late for this bill. We can do something for the next session, and if the sponsor is willing to further clarify. The bill refers to the electrical code and the local requirements, but again, the electrical code has details and requirements for the electrical installation, but doesn't have a scoping there. It doesn't clarify. It doesn't address at all if how you apply the load management system, how you use it. So this is the main purpose of this conversation, and I appreciate the opinions. I make notes, and it's very helpful. So, Mr. Chair, if you want, we can go back.
Well,
and
I think Chris has his hand up here too.
oh, sorry, I didn't see Chris.
Oh,
Yeah.
no worries. I just wanted to check my memory. The language, was that in the 2018, the load management system stuff? Or sorry, was it in the 2015 added kind of halfway through? Or was it brand new?
It's a brand new, I believe, because it's proposed with the underline.
Okay, because I recall discussion about it and having somebody talk about it, probably at one of these tag meetings. I recall the discussion and the intent being that if you were to have capacity for infrastructure later, the size and scale of what you're talking about without a load management system would change, like your transformer requirements. So your transformation needs changed, and it kind of was a snowball that got bigger, bigger, bigger. And that load management stuff was specific for the electrical vehicle charging, not for the whole building in the context of 427. It was more that you could only have so many chargers really charging at a time. Like think of a gas station and the number of pumps, right? You only have so many pumps at the gas station, even though you could have a line of cars waiting to get charged up. An allowance to say only 4 chargers are operating at full capacity at a time, and then it'll cycle through them and charge them in increments. That was my understanding, but I don't remember the context of where I heard that conversation. But I figure it was probably one of these meetings, but it all blends together at some point.
And keep in mind, and I have this in the next agenda item, but we'll get back to it. There is a new bill, HB 1287, which went even further, requiring the council to adopt more restrictive, more stringent standards. So I guess that means we need to go more than 10 and 20%. And it also requires electric vehicle charging infrastructure for R3 occupancies. And based on the feedback we got from the sponsor and listening to the hearings at the Senate, that means not only R3 built under the building code, that means 1 and 2 family dwellings as well. So this is something that is coming, and I wanted to introduce it to the TAC members, because probably next meeting or in July, we need to start working on this as well.
This is Todd. I have a question for Micah, and maybe it's for offline or later, but I'm really curious where it hits Seattle land use codes. I assume something related to parking, and whether or not that was embedded in the intent of any of these bills, or just as a Seattle crossover?
Good question. It's probably going to be based on, I know our policy folks in land use were kind of tied into some of what the state did. So the language is very similar. And it's just, you know, based on the percentages and the required installation of these systems. So the language is very similar, but it's land use based because that's where parking is driven, if at all, in Seattle. And then, of course, the electrical installation, that is the electrical code. So that's where that language resides. And then in the building code, we only have a pointer to the electrical code for, you know, those motor vehicle criteria. So I don't know if that answers, but I can.
No, it's
I can
fascinating
touch base
crossover,
on
so
a lot
thank you.
of
It's,
it.
yep, it's all,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, Stoyan, is that, is there anything else on this? Did you get everything?
I think so. Yeah, it was very helpful for me. And again, I will summarize it and I will present it at the council meeting. And we can skip the next agenda item, item 7. I already mentioned, you know, the new HB 1287. This is again going further requiring EV charging for R3 occupancies. And
Okay.
For the next TAC meeting, I can have a few options again for more specific options for discussion. So we can go back to agenda item.
Well, I guess 2, we'll reset, huh? And we'll start the meeting over and we'll go to agenda item 2. Now we have quorum to review and approve the agenda. Can we hear a motion to approve, please?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
This is Al at second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? So approved. Agenda item 3 is we hear a motion to review and approve the March 31st, 2021 summary minutes, please. Anyone?
This is Chris. Sorry, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Chris. Waiting for a second.
This is Sue, a second.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, any discussion on the summary minutes? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? So approved. Okay, item 4, meeting schedule. Do you mean the TAG meeting schedule?
Yes, the TAC meeting schedule, we will try to run the meetings every other week. So if we have a meeting today, the next one will be on June 23rd. And I know we're approaching, you know, July and August, and which are vacation months, but we have 30 plus proposals that the TAC needs to go through. And we have some important proposals that may require more time to develop, and the electric vehicle is one of those. Again, it's driven by legislature. So every other week. The other question is online meetings or in-person meetings or a hybrid. What I've been told by the council staff, I'll use my new card here. I'm new, but they were running the meetings like a hybrid meetings, allowing the public to participate in person, but also keeping the online option. And I'm also waiting for a direction from the department from DES. I don't know if they will end up with some technical recommendations, how we can do that, but most likely we will have this hybrid version. I haven't discussed this with the chair, with Andrew yet, but we will probably for the next meeting we'll have more information how we want to do that. So again, every other week, the meetings may be longer in order to cover everything in the agenda, but we don't need to meet every week.
So this is Todd. I'm new to the tags. Were they normally 100% in person with some call-ins?
In person plus call-ins, yes.
Interesting.
I hear different opinions, and that some folks prefer the online version because they don't need to travel. Others need to meet in person and include some socializing into the work. So I'm okay either way. But again, discussing with Ray and Krista that, especially Krista, she's been here forever. They were providing, options, for online and in person using WebEx and conference call lines. So we'll try to figure out something. And I shared this at the council meeting, but also the DES is working on something to allow us and everybody to run the meetings. It will be some kind of a new system that will have this cameras, 360 angle cameras that will capture the meeting. So I don't have the details yet, and I hope I will have more information for the next meeting. But the most important part for now is that we'll have the meetings every other week. So 1 week we'll have the fire tag, and the next week we'll have the building code tag. This also will help. We have tag members that are both in the fire tag and in the building tag, so we'll give them a break.
Okay, thank you. Anything else or any other comments from anyone else? Okay.
This is Mark. I did have a question, Stoyton. Do you know when the tag committees start for the residential energy code?
I think it's Krista is the right person. Krista is the right person for that.
Okay.
But I don't expect before September. September, October, but don't cite me on that. I'm not. It depends how she's doing with the commercial code, and she has a lot in her plate, especially, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 proposals.
160.
How many?
160.
160. Okay, I was a little bit optimistic, but 160.
Thanks.
Okay, well, if that's it for me, because thank you, Stoyan. Are we ready to jump into 5?
Okay, so we are going to 5, and John, please open the first document, 01. That
Go back. Okay. It's mine.
the first document that John is trying to open is it's right. This is the right one. Washington State Building Code Review and Adoption Process. And John, if you can go to the highlighted area. Okay, so this is in a summary what the TAC needs to do, and I know most of you know that. For the folks that are new in the process, the TAC reviews each proposal, and they vote and determine if they will recommend support of the proposal, recommend modifications of the proposals, and then we will summarize everything and refer everything to the council. And if you can go to page 2, oops, no, a little bit up, right there on the right side. Okay, stay there. Yes. So an objective of statewide adoption is to minimize state amendments to the model codes. So this is in addition to our requirements that are for the council to adopt the model codes. And this one is important to remember. And if we go to page 3 on the left, okay, so these are the criteria for accepting the statewide amendments. The amendment is needed to address a critical life safety need. The amendment clarifies the intent or application of the code. The amendment is necessary for consistency with state or federal laws and regulations. The amendment corrects errors and omissions. The amendment eliminates an obsolete, conflicting, duplicating, or unnecessary regulation. And I can send you this a document for you to have for reference, but I wanted to share it with you before the meeting. When you're debating the proposals, this is what needs to be taken into account. So, John, document 03.
It's Stoyan, before you leave the wax, you may have just said this, is the process of the council, like we did last month, to push it to the tags, is that, it's almost a docketing process. Is that defined in the WAC, or?
Yes.
I assume.
So yes, it's in the WAC and it's in our bylaws. So it goes to the council. We receive the comments. The council staff. We receive the comments. We review the comments for, if we can find something that is missing or something that is wrong. The comments go to the council. If we have information for the comments, we can share the information and we can make staff recommendations. The council can discuss the comments, and then it goes for the real work. It goes to the TAC.
So I guess related to today's meeting, we only get to review the 3 or so
That's
that
correct. Yes.
have already been viewed by the council. Everything else is off the table until the council looks at
Yes,
it.
you're correct. One exception, one of the proposals is option 1 proposal for the same section. We have option 2 for the next meeting, but we can discuss that. You don't need to make a decision for the second proposal, but it's related to for the first one, so we can bend the rule a little bit, not break it. But
thank you.
So, John, number 3. Okay, here is the first proposal for discussion. And
would you like me to present it since I'm the proponent?
Yes, please. You were
So
fast. This is
if
what
you
the-
could scroll down to the bottom, because we're only going to be discussing the IBC portion. There, yeah, the 2021 IBC. So I'm actually going to make the committee do a little bit of work here. And if John, are you able to edit this document?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So, so this is a change that has been proposed in the fire code to update section 510 of the International Fire Code, and it was presented to the fire code tag last week, and it's going forward to the committee. There's one portion of this is just a title change in section 918. If you want to scroll down to that.
Oh, little up. Right there, right there. That below 2021 International Building Code, right there. Yes.
Okay. So this is just to coordinate with the fire code. It's actually a proposal F32 that's in the group A proposals for the 2024. And this type of technology, it's just ongoing and it develops so quickly. So the language was just to try to keep up with what industry standards are. But there's one modification to this that that was dropped off that needs to be put back in by this tag committee, is the word system needs to be added after the underlying word enhancement. That was something that was done at the national level and I just missed it. So it's supposed to be in building emergency responder communication enhancement system. There you go. And that's it. So this is just a quick little change to correlate the building code and the fire code together. Crickets.
If you're looking for a motion to move it forward, I'd be happy to give it to you.
Dwayne, is that what we're looking for?
If there is not a discussion, yes.
To me, it seems pretty clear. They're just aligning with industry standards.
So Chris, go ahead and make the motion. We'll second it and then we can deliberate if we need to.
Or we would probably want to deliberate before if we want to. So
I think, well, Stoyan, yeah, we're flexible, right?
Okay.
On this, but if we want to deliberate the motion or we just want to talk about the context here, absolutely, we can. There's nothing holding us from discussing.
I think if we want to move it forward, we would typically just move it forward as shown. So we would want to beat it up if we wanted to first, but I don't think we do. So I would move to recommend approval of this code change to the council as shown on the screen.
To the BFP, right?
Second.
Yeah, sorry, BFP. Yep.
Okay.
Quick question from Micah.
Please, Micah.
Can you included the word system? Would that also need to be included on the previous section that's technically not part of the building code tag, but 1103.2, the first sentence?
Somebody's gonna have to scroll up to that because
Sorry, I'm looking at the proposal on my own screen, so you're right. You're right there at
yeah, that's-
1103.2. I guess are you asking that the tag replace?
no, I
system throughout
I
the
don't want you
proposal?
guys playing with the fire code part of it. I think you guys need to just stick with the building code and we'll try to, if it needs to get added, I'll bring it up at the BFP committee meeting.
It was just a question. I actually think staff can correlate that for you, Ken.
Yeah,
If that was the intent.
yeah, I just want to double check with the other proposal. But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I don't want to muddy up the water and start messing around with this. I just want you guys to concentrate on the building code portion.
You have my blessing to bother Ray next week. We're okay with the building code only.
That's why I logged in. I want to make sure I didn't get volunteered for anything.
Amy, I see your hand.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just curious. I just noticed, where you have the red system right above it, you have coverage enhancement. Shouldn't that match? Because I see it's changed all throughout the document. The
No,
bold
it-
letters. You don't
because
need
the word coverage got struck in the general section, but the title of that is just emergency responder communication coverage enhancement. So no, that the proposal is not to,
Okay, so you don't need to have it say
no, because
enhancement system.
no,
Okay,
because if I did, the change would be, it would only talk about in-building emergency responder communication enhancement system. And this is just emergency responder communication coverage enhancement. And it might not be an in-building system.
okay. Well, I hope to pick up more lingo as I go on. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Do we need can we do a verbal vote on this, Diane, or do we need a roll call?
Well, we don't need a roll call
Okay.
if we have the consensus.
Yeah, okay, let's just do verbal then. All those in favor of the motion as written, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. Thank you.
The next one, John, is document 404. It's related to section 903.3.1.2. And it's submitted by John Sue, and I'm not sure if he's here to introduce it.
I don't see him there, but I would happily nominate Ken to talk about it. I can tell you what's going on if you want. I'm pretty familiar with it.
Yeah, I can do that as well.
Or Micah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Chris.
go for it. Oh, did I lose? Okay, I guess I lost. Okay, if you want to scroll down, I'll tell you what's going on. So somehow in the 2021, some amendment language got proposed that really took the ability to use NFPA 13R out of what the standard is really intended to do. What this amendment does is correlates the building code with what we already talked about in the fire code, but allowing the use of an NFPA 13R fire sprinkler system for all buildings up to 60 feet in height, and does specifically allow that building to be stacked on top of a 3-hour separation, the type 5 over type 1 style building, provided the wood construction does not exceed 4 stories, and provided the total height of the building, including that podium, does not exceed 60 feet, which is within the scope of the NFPA standard. So I think at the fire code tag level, we were all pretty much in favor of it. I don't recall anybody expressing any concern.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. We adopted this, or we moved this forward as written.
Yeah, and I don't even think there was anybody that was like, or any kind of concern at all, from what I recall in the discussion.
I'll add one more point, is I think this also maintains the 2018 language and doesn't, and revises it back to that instead of adopting the 2021 I-code language as well.
Correct. And if it's not the exact language, it's at least clearer language, meaning the same thing that's there. Yeah.
We're looking for a motion. This is Mike Barth. I'd move that we approve this. I believe it is necessary to keep it for the consistency of being able to use NFPA 13R.
Second that.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. So this will be forwarded to the BFE. Thank you. And then, so is that 2 out of 3, Stoyan?
2 out of, well, we have 4. So 2
Oh,
out
4,
of,
I'm sorry. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Next one is section 911, actually, I'm sorry, 911 in the building code.
Hey, I'm back. This is just a correlation. So this was it's an existing Washington State amendment. I'll wait for him to pull it up.
Yes. Close it up there.
John, you can click page width. Right there on the left. Oh, no, on the right. A little bit right there.
Well, it's frozen. My
Oh, it's frozen.
computer's frozen, yeah. Just waiting for it to catch up. I may have to reopen it.
If you can stop sharing, I can open mine. Or if you can reload faster, then.
Share screen.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see the document now?
Yep, this is good. All right, so it's pretty simple. So if you look at the number 5, the proposal is to maintain the existing state amendment in the fire code and show it as an amendment in the building code. I'm going to guess it was an editorial item that was left out prior. So we're looking at making sure that the 2 books say the same thing, and that's what I'm doing here, is basically making sure that the fire code and building code, for the same reason, is consistent. And that's it.
I would motion to approve that.
Give you a second.
Then Al and Chris, is that what I saw?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify. Oh, go ahead, please, Micah.
I would say I have a question on some of these. Is the discussion only open for tag members?
No.
Okay. Not that I have any discussion, but I was just curious. I know we got about 20 folks on. I'm sure since we only have about 7 members of the tag, I just wanted to verify that who could actually comment. So, and then I'll have a separate question for Ken on this one offline. Thanks.
The meeting is open and everybody can participate and comment.
Okay, are we waiting for a vote or are we waiting for a comment?
If anybody from the public wants to comment on it.
Okay, Mike, I was confused. Are you asking on behalf of someone or just a point of?
It was just a point of order. I didn't have a comment time, and I'm sorry. I should have said a point of order. Just
Oh,
how
okay.
fast we're moving through it, I didn't know if the public knew that they could actually jump in, because it went straight from Ken talking to a motion, and I just want to make sure that we have as much public input as possible. And it's just not on this one. It was just verifying that everybody knows that, I don't want to rush through it too fast and not let folks have a chance to speak up or unmute
No,
before
thank
a
you.
vote is taken. So it wasn't anything particular to this one. I just thought we were moving kind of quick through some of them. So
I'll take that. I'll take that now. Thank you, Micah.
You just told me to be quiet, Todd. You just say stop
Slow
talking,
down,
Micah.
you're saying, I got it.
So I do have a comment that none of you picked up on. So the 911.1.2, does anybody have a copy of the 2021 IBC? Because generally you don't repeat of the International Building Code in here because you are in the International Building Code. So the base code language does not include that. So I'm thinking that maybe the building code tag here wants to maybe make a change to that and go with the base code language that doesn't show of the International Building Code.
This, Mike, I do have it open here, and that's correct. It is not, the language doesn't include that in the text.
I think it's one of those cases where the one that's in the fire code is going to have to say building code, and
Yes.
the one that's in the building code is not.
Exactly.
So we'll have
That's exactly correct. The 508.12 from the fire code does say it, but the 911.12 does not. You are correct.
Okay, and 911.12 is not repeated in the fire code?
No, it's actually in 508.12.
Okay, there's not a second copy of that though, that lives in chapter 9 in the fire code.
I know there is not one. 911 is a different section in the fire
Okay,
code.
just checking.
So would we want to do that on the fly here, or is that small enough that staff, you can address that before it's presented to BFP? Is that appropriate? for consistency? Or we can just do it on the fly here if that's important.
I would recommend doing it on the fly right now.
Okay,
Then that's what goes to the VFP.
make sure we all are on the same page. Thanks.
Yes.
So who is the virtual red ink here?
It's gonna be me, I guess. So
Actually have it, I can make changes too.
uh, with section 707, this is what we need to delete, right?
Correct, in both locations. Nope, in both locations of section 911.
Okay. 711.
It should read in accordance with section 711, comma, or both.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Not to be picky there, but the comma should not be deleted.
Yeah, I opened the book. I saw it. I'll clean it up.
Oh, let's be picky. I like that. Thank you.
I'll fire back someday.
Was that it, or was it also in 508? I didn't understand.
No, not in 508. 508 is the fire code, so it
Got it.
has to
Thank you.
reference the IBC.
That's what I thought I understood. Okay, thank you.
Are we good with the commas?
I'm curious, where was it changed to 2 hour? Because in the 2018, there's no amendment.
Exactly. There was no amendment in the IBC. It was in the IFC under the 2018. And for some reason,
Okay.
it didn't get correlated into the 2018 IBC. So that's what I'm proposing for the 2021.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Ken, was it changed? You said it was changed in the IFC. What was the reason it was changed in the IFC the last cycle?
I was not the proponent of it, so I do not know.
Okay, so this is just a correlation.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, all the things smooshed together since I'm on both tags, and I was on both last time too. I recall the methodology there was most of the stuff inside of that room requires 2 hour survivability. So why have a room that's not also 2 hour, I believe was the logic there.
Stoyan, this is Lee. Can I interject here a second?
Yes, sir.
Hi, everybody. So I'm from the city of Bellevue, and I believe this was a code change that we proposed maybe as far back as the 2012 IBC or before. So it was related to our FCCs and the need to be consistent about that 2 hour rating. So anyway, I think there's some historical background, and I support maintaining that 2 hour separation. Thank you.
I have a question here on the economic impact. Is there an economic impact? And it says no right here. And I understand that it's already adopted in the fire code, but since we're in the building code, and I don't know how it's been enforced in the local jurisdiction. So do you think it's a correct statement when we say?
I think it's an absolutely correct statement, because this is just a correlation between the two. You would have to go back to the original code change proposal to get an economic impact. This is just a correlation.
Well,
This is not a new requirement.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to do the economic impact. I'm just asking.
I think what you could add in the explanation would be that the more restrictive condition would apply, which would be the fire code now. And we're just eliminating surprises by correlating. So you could say no confidently and explain it that way.
Okay.
I would agree too. And, when I had my question, it was just seeing where it was because I didn't have the fire code open in front of me. But yeah, I would agree. There's no economic impact as a result of it being a correlation.
So this is Todd. A quick question back to if we can show the 508 and the 911 language. So if it's already adopted in the 2018 508 section of the IFC, is it really appropriate that it's a change, that it's underlined and crossed out, or was that already 2 hour?
Because it's not that way in the
2021
base code, I think
Gotcha.
that it does need to show that.
Understood. Thank you. Okay. Good discussion. Anyone else? Micah, you ready?
Yeah, I'm
Sorry.
good.
Okay. Okay. So we're voting on the motion to forward this to as written to the BFP. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Or abstentions? Okay. So I guess recommended.
The
Okay.
next one.
Go ahead, Stein.
The next one is, oh, somebody cut me off. Okay, John, you up? Great.
You got it.
Okay, so I see Lee is here and he can explain the reason for this proposal, but this is the one that I mentioned when we started. We have two proposals for the same section. They are similar but not the same. This one was referred to the TAC from the council at the last meeting, and the next one is not discussed yet. The difference is the new proposal adds two exceptions, and I will give the stage to Lee. He can explain the reason for the proposal.
Thanks, Stoyan. So this is Lee Kranz. I'm with the City of Bellevue. So the reason there's two proposals is we wanted to give the TAG a couple of different options, and this one, I believe, this was submitted represented by WABO. And what we're trying to do here is address an issue that has come up recently regarding occupied roofs, where the occupied roof encompasses only part of the whole roof area. So what we're typically seeing is a deck of some kind that's located on the roof, where people go up there via the elevator, or typically there's going to be two stairways to use for access or egress. But the problem is that the building code limits the need for a guardrail when there's a 30-inch difference in elevation. And these occupied roof decks are typically like, anywhere from just a couple inches up to maybe 8, 10, 12 inches, that kind of thing. So we can't, by the current code, we can't require a guard to be placed between the occupied roof and the rest of the roof. So we could be on a 25 or 30-story building and have an occupied roof up there, and the building official has no regulatory authority to say, hey, you're going to have to provide a guard between the occupied roof area and the rest of the roof. So this proposal adds that language that essentially provides scoping for a guard to be provided at the perimeter of the occupied portions of the occupied roof. So the other one that we wanted to make sure that the tag was aware of was an option to include a couple of exceptions that would be exceptions 9 and 10, which basically says that you know, portions of the occupied roof located less than 30 inches measured vertically to the adjacent unoccupied roof areas where approved guards are present at the perimeter of the roof, then you would not need the guard at the separation line between the occupied portion and the rest of the roof. So if you put a guard all the way around the perimeter, then you know, that would suffice the need to have some kind of or to have a guard at that location. The other exception that's in this other proposal that I submitted as a representative for the city of Bellevue allows an exception that says that at an occupied portion of an occupied roof where a barrier approved by the building official is provided, then you would not need the full guard requirement, because you'll notice that the word guard is in italics, which means that it's a defined term, and it sends you to chapter 16, which requires a 200-pound lateral load to be applied to the guardrail to ensure that it's you know, structurally sound. And it also requires spacing of the spindles, so a 4-inch spear can't pass through the guard. There's height requirements and so forth. So this other exception, number 10, is suggested because we did not want to have the building official have to kind of go out on a limb and say, yeah, we'll allow an alternate to the full guard requirement, you know, because it's like, you know, they don't need a full guard, maybe just a barrier like what you'd have in a swimming pool situation where you're trying to keep, you know, kids from getting into the pool, where in this case, you're trying to keep people on the occupied portion of the occupied roof, or yeah, the occupied roof. So that's kind of the background on this. If the tag feels like this is good enough, you know, we'll just go ahead and approve this one. That would be fine with us. But we wanted to make sure that you understood that there was another proposal that provided these other exceptions for the building official to utilize when we're talking about separating or keeping people on the occupied roof. So one thing that I will say is that the exception to allow a barrier approved by the building official, we could get into some dangerous territory there where, let's say, a portion of the occupied roof was located at a corner of the roof area, and you know, you've got like a 10-story drop at that location. We certainly don't want to have some kind of a you know, less than standard guardrail provided in those locations. So that's kind of the executive summary of this proposal, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And you see on the screen the two exceptions that Lee was talking about, 9 and 10. I see a hand, Al.
Yes. Well, thank you, first of all, Lee, for this proposal. Really appreciate it. The one thing I'm a little concerned about, because we've had this on a couple of occasions without really the language to make it right, but we have assisted living facilities that are allowed these days to provide an outdoor space for memory care residents on an occupiable roof. And in a couple occasions, we've had significantly large, what I'll call sunlight or a big set of windows that have mechanically operated vents even to allow fresh air in. And we didn't even have, and for memory care, that's really kind of dangerous to, do you think that I could, with this language, could I get a guard around a big sunlight with, you know, what, regardless if it was, if there's mechanically operated vents or not? I don't want adult children, frankly, climbing on skylights, even though they're designed, you know, for specific structural, they're also not really designed to dance on either, right? So you
Yeah,
think,
I was just going to say, Al, I think that's a really good question, and it's something that I think, you know, having been involved in plan review for many years, if I was reviewing a project like that, I would require some form of separation, because it would be like if somebody wanted to put a glass floor or something where the public would be able to access that. It's either going to have to be structurally capable of supporting, you know, a person, a floor load, or it's going to need to be separated off. But that's going to be something that is open to interpretation by the plans examiner or the building official. But I totally understand what you're saying. And, you know, again, in my experience, I would require that guardrail to be provided or a structural skylight.
well, to be completely transparent, that's exactly what we did, but we didn't feel like we had real good foundation for in the code language to do it. But it was kind of more of a common sense thing in a health and life safety issue. So we went ahead and required it. But as long as you feel that I could do that with this language, I'm really in favor of this proposal.
This is Mark. I'd like to make a comment that I like having that exception number 10 in the code, because I can see where there may be cases where some kind of design review of a building and seeing a guard, they may not like the specific looks of that guard. They may have to alter it some way, and it kind of gives you a little bit of latitude to make a guard, but it might be a fancier type of one that some kind of committee could approve. Just my 2 cents.
You know, this is Al, I'd support that, especially again, given the scenario I painted for you folks with memory care in assisted living, but they can be quite active. And in some of these cases, I mean, we would require it to be at least 6 feet tall and not climbable. A guard is very easily climbable. And when we have the memory care folks that have cognitive challenges, and this could be in a mental health facility as well, folks, we want to ensure that these people are safe if they're going to be allowed to, as an outdoor experience, be up on one of these spaces.
Chris, and then Sue, I think. Go ahead. Or Gustoyan, were you saying something?
Well, yeah, I was saying, I see raised hands.
Okay,
Oh,
thank
okay,
you.
cool. We'll see how close Sue and I are thinking to each other. We do a lot of work together, so we'll see if we're thinking the same thing. My concern with the exception number 10 is that whenever we add or approve by the building official, it pressures the building official to approve something weird. There's always the option to submit an alternative means and methods that demonstrates equivalency. But whenever I have something that says or approved by from my experience, it's usually the fire code official. But whenever I have that, it is, hey, can you go ask your boss? Can I do this? So it slows down my review every time that exists. And it does make me feel more pressured to approve something that's weird that I may feel less comfortable with. And the grounds that I have to stand on are not as firm when it is give me a guard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Chris. I think that our intent here was to provide the building official with some flexibility built into the code, so you wouldn't have to do an alternate. But our thought was that building officials would not want to stick their neck out that far to say, yeah, you can just use a barrier rather than a full guard. I think that most jurisdictions, they're gonna see this and go, well, we're not gonna allow that exception. I'm the building official, and by the way, it's a small b, small o, so that includes the plans examiners too, or building inspectors. So hopefully every jurisdiction would sort of have their kind of policy or consistent application of this section or exception, but totally get what you're saying, and I would leave that up to the TAG to decide how they want to go with that.
Yeah, I was going to add on to that too. That exception was kind of brought up because technically right now in the code, there is not a requirement. And so some jurisdictions have allowed large planters or planter boxes or other things that would kind of provide that barrier or guard type system, but not be, an actual meet the code guard, if that makes any sense, but it's acceptable to the building official of that jurisdiction. So that's why that exception was in there. I agree with you on the lightweight barriers or something else. I'm not a fan of those, but at the same time, this was to allow that flexibility for the building official. And I agree with the pressures they get put under on some of those things, but right now there's nothing in the code. So wanted to put something and then provide flexibility at the same time.
Yeah, so this is Sue. We had the WABO TCD had discussed this particular proposal as well. And one of the suggestions I had made was taking 10 and just say guards or an approved barrier up in that language in that first paragraph, and not have an exception number 10. And then it's just more, to me, it's more obvious that it's an approved barrier, that you would, I mean, you could even say guards or an equivalent approved barrier or something like that. That I think a lot of times you see, large planters and things that are really effectively blocking somebody from, dropping off the perimeter of this occupied roof. And I think, these big planters that you see oftentimes are a very effective means of doing that.
Hey, Sue.
I agree too.
My only concern with that, and I know we talked about this at the TCD meeting, I think I had submitted this before that idea came up, or either that or I failed to do it, my apologies. But my only concern about adding it up at the 1015.2 is that, and maybe it's the same for exception number 10, is a scenario where the building official says, yeah, it's okay to use like a swimming pool barrier, and then you get that at the portion of the occupied roof where there is a 10-story drop off, and so now you've got less than a full-fledged guard in those locations, which I'm very concerned about that scenario. So we're just trying to figure out how we can address this in the code, because right now the building official has no, it's not more than 30 inches above the adjacent roofing area. On the portion of the occupied roof that does have the 10-story drop off, obviously that's more than 30 inches, so you'd have to use a full-fledged guard there. And now that I think about it, maybe that's covered by the first sentence above, where it talks about areas that are more than 30 inches elevation difference.
This is Mike Barth. I think it's most appropriate to be in the exceptions as opposed to the body, because we're not trying to monkey with any of the other pieces of it. And I think by keeping the exception number 10 in there, it serves as, you know, in those situations where like a planter may work, that planter then can be called the, you know, an approved barrier without it fully satisfying the requirements of a guard. But by it being an exception, everything else still has to satisfy the technical requirements of a guard, which is important in this. So I would, you know, I would recommend, you know, having this. I think we need this amendment, but I also think we need the exception number 9 added in there as well, as shown on the screen now. And then 10, I think, is helpful without really harming anything in the long run with that.
Hey, Mike, I wonder if what you would think about adding the words adjacent to the roofing areas or something in exception number 10. That would limit it to the portion of the perimeter of the occupied roof that doesn't have the, you know, 10-story drop off.
I think either way it could work, because if the roof deck, for example, is near the edge, then the regular guard requirements apply anyway, and always have. It's when the roof deck is away, you know, let's call it 10 feet away from the edge, you know, that's where this is so critical to have, because, you know, that 10 feet is very short when if a child is running, or, you know, in Al's case, if a, you know, memory impaired person is heading that way. You know, again, that's all those are arguments for including this amendment. So.
Lee, this is Micah. I'm not sure I would like to add that to exception 10, just for the simple fact that, say your occupied roof is close to the edge and you have a parapet and you want to put, you know, a wind screen up on that parapet that would also meet the requirements of the guard. According to that, if you added kind of what you just said in exception 10, you would have to also put a guard around the occupied roof portion. So I guess I'm just asking, what would adjacent mean in this instance? So I kind of like how it is.
Okay. Thanks, Micah.
I see Kent there.
Yeah, it's me. All right, so this is where I'm going to get a little technical on the proposal. Is one, I'm still worried about correlation between the fire and building code. 1015.2 is in the fire code also, so we want to make sure that this is mentioned in the fire code, these changes. In addition, the blue section where it's referenced in 1015.2 in accordance with section 1607.8, I believe it needs to be 1607.9. I was looking at the 2021, and then in number 7, section 1029.17.2, I believe it's supposed to be 1030.17.2. I don't know if that's just a misprint from a cut and paste, but those two references I believe are wrong. And again, I still think this needs to show that it's going into the IFC for changes under 1015.2. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thanks for pointing that out, Ken. That was a rookie mistake on my part.
Well, believe me, you're going to have lots of these over your time here. Nature of the beast.
Well, Ken, was that a friendly amendment to this proposal? That
Well, I don't know if it just needs to include the IFC in it. And then I don't know if it's a printing error from the 2021 or not, but I just looked at the 2021 and those two reference sections are wrong. And I just believe that this should be in the fire code also, so we're correlated between the two books. So I think that either you guys make this recommendation and it goes to the BFP committee and they take the action of including it in the fire code, or you don't. So,
Well, if you scroll up on this proposal, is the fire code box checked as well?
no.
But it could be.
I would definitely support that.
I would second that.
And then you just have to clarify the proposal, include the 1015.2 under the IFC because it's not in 503.1.4.2 of the IFC.
So can we make those edits right now and before we potentially
So
forward it on?
we have something else here. So we have one proposal that was referred by the council, and that proposal is without the exceptions, and the one we are talking about is formally not here. So we're talking about it, but it's not here.
I see.
So what we can do is a few options. So accept the first proposal without the exceptions. And when we get to the second proposal during the next meeting, we'll take into account what was debated, and Lee will have time to revise his proposal if he wants to, or we can reject the proposal with the comment that there is a new proposal that meets that is a better proposal.
Stoney,
yes,
this is Todd. Can't we just take the feedback from the tag right now, have staff prepare this and send it back to what I'm calling the docketing process with the council to merge those two and send it back to and that might be to send it both to IBC and IFC.
We can do that too. Yes.
Is anyone opposed to that?
Seems most efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a docketing problem to me rather than we need to solve it by rejecting here.
Typically, we have this similar proposals at the same time, but this one's a little different because Lee submitted the first one early in the process, and we didn't see it when he submitted the second one. This is the only reason, but we will merge it and we will make it look better.
This is Mike. Can I make a motion then to accept this with the exceptions 9 and 10 and with any administrative corrections of any numbering?
Well, Michael.
And then, when we pass it along, we pass it along with a message asking that the IFC also be made consistent.
Yeah, Michael, I think and Stoney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're saying is we can't take action on this proposal right now. It hasn't gone through the council process yet and kicked back down to the tag, but we can take notes from today's tag, not take action on the proposal that's in play right now, but send it back with notes to the council and staff to merge for council consideration to send back to the tag. Is that correct, Stoney?
That's a better option, I
So
think.
no action
Okay.
with recommendations to staff. And remind me, Stoney, we take public comment when we're considering this. It was only 2 weeks ago, but I don't remember.
You mean public comments now?
No, with the council, when would there be input from the public or from the proponent at the council level?
The next council meeting will be the same as the one we just passed. The council will just refer the proposals, but without technical comments on the proposals.
Right.
Go
ahead.
If there may be some discussion based on the submitted form. If it's missing something, but not in detail about adopting or not adopting the comment. If I understood your question correctly, though.
Yeah, just to clarify for everyone else, what I'm asking is, staff, you'll be able to take the input from this discussion from the TAG and present it to the council with the two proposals side by side. And
We
then the
can do,
record-
yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Todd, normally we'll just take the recommendation for the tag and then the public comment will come during the CR 102 unless the proponent has something specific to their proposal.
Yes, but this is a unique situation. So
It is unique, yeah.
I guess maybe I'm formally asking, are we going to see both proposals side by side? And then you're going to say, here's the staff recommended merged proposal with.
no, for the next meeting, you will see only the second proposal as submitted with the exceptions. And for the meeting after that in September, then we'll merge the proposals and we'll have a clean proposal for
Okay.
the council.
I hope I'm not being
not for the council, but for the standing committee.
Okay, I hope I'm not beating this death, but we'll be able at the council level in 2 weeks or a week, we'll be able to say, we see this proposal, we understand it was similar to the previous proposal that we sent to the TAG. Our recommendation is send it back to those two, back to the TAG, merge them. And oh, by the way, we want to also send it to the IFC TAG.
You can do that if you want, but it's not needed.
Okay.
Stoyan, can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
So, in terms of merging, I'm almost thinking it's sounding like, based on some of the comments that TAG members have made, that they prefer this proposal that's shown on the screen now. So, I mean, one possible solution is just to reject the first one, and staff could make notes that, this needs to be updated to the 2021 code. Again, my apologies for not doing that correctly. And then if council is okay with it, then it would come back to the TAG, and then this or the other one that was just up would be approved. So I guess that's my question. Is
with or without the action, now we'll do the same thing.
okay.
The final result will be the same.
Okay.
By the way, I'm handing the baton to our distinguished chair, Mr. Andrew Klein.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you so much too for covering for me. I apologize that I wasn't able to jump on to a little bit late. So
I was going to say, before we move on, I was going to point out that when we say staff, whoever's getting stuck with that, to correlate them between the IBC, IFC, I think similar to what Ken pointed out earlier, is that the one for the IFC is going to read different because there is no 1607.8. That structural stuff isn't in IFC. So there will be different code sections for IBC, IFC, even though those sections are present in both. So that's just a note for staff to make the cleanest possible thing when it comes smooshed later.
Chris, my hope is to get, when we get all done with everything, is to get the IBC tag and the IFC tag in one meeting together. And that way we can mesh everything at one time properly.
Do I get 2 votes?
Yes, get 2 votes. And your hands up, Chris, still, if you knew that.
Oh, I'll fix it.
thank you, Chris.
So Andrew, 2 options here: reject the proposal without the exceptions, and we will work on the second proposal, or just don't take action and we will do the same thing. We'll work on the second proposal.
Let's not take an action if we don't have to.
Okay. This is the last proposal for today then.
Nice. It's like when I ask if anyone needs help in the kitchen when things are done. Best time to come in.
We have one more item on the agenda, though. Other business?
So that's electric vehicles, right?
I think we passed electric vehicles when you weren't here.
Okay.
Andrew, we didn't have a quorum at first, so we went through the items we could cover.
Item 6 and 7 were just talking, discussion, didn't need any action.
Okay. So what's left?
Other business, item 8, other business.
Okay. Anyone have any other business? All righty. Well, if there's no other business, I will take an official motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And all those opposed. So thank you again. Again, I apologize. Todd, thank you so much. Stoyan, everyone else, thank you. And yeah, we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you.
June 23rd is the next one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye.